Good evening, folks. Hope you all are doing well. Looks like I got my camera online. Something new and different. Trying to add to the quality of this stream. Hopefully this helps some. The internet connection is still going to be an issue. But hey, welcome back. It's Monday night, and we are going to talk Chiefs and a bunch about them. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and get clicked right now for that sub. Leave a like and leave the bell notification click to all so you know what happens around here. A lot of folks in the chat already. Nice to see you all. It's great to have everybody back. Super chats are open. If you'd like to support the channel, make sure you leave a super chat. And if you do, ask a question tonight, and I will make sure that I get to it. We're going to have a couple of things happen tonight that might be a little bit different. You never know when we might have a guest. I'm working on a couple of things as I double check that. And I think it could be interesting going forward that we might be able to have a couple extra voices on here, as well as I'm leading up to, if that goes out, there we go. I'm leading up to the memberships. And one of the things that we've come to determine is that one of the member perks, especially for the top tier, I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work yet, but one of the member perks is going to be a private Zoom feed where you can get on with the RGR staff, me, as well as Dan, and hopefully Aaron as well. Aaron's in the chat. Everybody give him a hand. He's our fearless mod and kind of keeps things straight around here, which I really, really appreciate. I see that there's a couple of questions already, so we will get to that just in a second. I want to get off to the right flow. And I want to make sure that the decision point, the reason that I put that up there as the title of this video is because there are things coming. We're a couple of weeks away from the deadline for the franchise tag. Chris Jones has to sign it. He has to come into camp on time if that's going to work. They're just about out of time. And this is usually kind of the magic hour. When a deadline looms, that's when things get done. And this deadline is definitely looming. If there's an outside chance, and I do think it's outside, I don't think it's likely that this deal gets done. But there is an outside chance that it could. And if so, it's going to be in the next couple weeks. About 2 weeks out is where you start to get things broken loose. And I hope that that really does the job, to tell you the truth. Now, the other decision is how you're going to pay Patrick Mahomes. I'm sure there'll be questions about that tonight, but I just want to touch on it. I have a rumors video coming out tomorrow that's going to address a couple of the question marks about Patrick's contract, as well as some things about ludicrous ideas about trading for backups, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure to check that out. It'll premiere tomorrow night, just about the same time as this one. So without further ado, let's get into the questions and make sure that I start from the top. First question was, Curtis, how are you? Hope you're doing well. Oh, hold on. I got to fix that real quick. We're going to take that down. Oh, and I might as well tell you, if you want to support the channel, another way to do it is by hitting Teespring and helping us out. You can buy yourself a t-shirt, whatever. And this, if this is going to overlay correctly, which it doesn't appear to be doing, the new schedule, Monday Night Live, the rumors film in the midweek, and then I'm going to have bonus episodes for you right up until camp on Thursday and Fridays too. So if you're around, make sure you check those out. I think it'll be worth your time. Now, when we get back to Curtis's question, where did it go? There it is. Get ready for the fourth weekend upcoming. Oh, good for you. Sorry, that's not a question for me. It's just a question. Well, Gary's in here. Hot and Spicy's in here. Aaron's in here. Let's get rogue. I am totally with you. Okay, so folks, question marks at the beginning. Those of you that are old hands around here, you know the drill. Let's see who's got a question. Okay, so that's an interesting point, Curtis, and I actually talked about that on the Locked On Chiefs podcast this week. The concept of blocking off, and I do believe it's going to be more than 8 rows. From what I've heard around the league, they're talking 25, maybe 30. That's going to be a big difference. But again, that gives you a barrier for the players that have been tested and tested and tested, and the coaching staffs to be away from anybody who might have come into the stadium sick. So I guess that makes sense to me. It's definitely a precaution. And, you know, if you're one of those people that has season tickets in the first row, it definitely sucks. And I'll be interested to see how the team goes about compensating you for that because it's not quite normal, and I don't know how they're going to go about that. They definitely have something to make up. And before I go any farther, I think I saw, is Justin Trobaugh here tonight? Because, Justin, I got that package from you, and I appreciate it. That was pretty nice. Something that I'm not a huge jersey guy. This is going to be one of 2 that I own, so thank you. Very much appreciated. Let's see. So getting farther into the questions. Oh, skip too far. That's what happens sometimes. Tonight's beer, before I go any farther, a nice clean IPA with a little bit of coconut. It is from my favorite brewery, or one of them. This is Fremont. If I can get that in front where it will actually focus. Fremont Dayflying Coconut IPA. It's great. Give that a shot if you can get it in your area. Okay, Michael Bauer, how confident are you at having training camp? That's a really good question. I'll tell you this, I was more confident a couple days ago. The more this goes on, and tonight's Locked On Chiefs comes out in 15 minutes, you'll hear me talk about Paul Sheehy, who is an agent here in Colorado, but represents the Colquitt brothers and Dave Tobe as coach. And he's in critical condition on a ventilator here in Colorado because the virus caught up with him about a week ago. There's a lot of scary things going on, and it's not slowing down, and it's actually getting farther into support personnel, people that aren't, on an NFL player, but are surrounded by NFL players. So that is definitely a concern, something that we have to keep an eye on and see what comes back. It could become something that the league has to address eventually. In-person meetings with agents are pretty common, but they're not constant, so you never know. But that could come into play. Steve Concepcion, how are you? Why wasn't Shady active in the Super Bowl? Would you have activated him if he were healthy? I probably would have had him active, yeah, just in case, to tell you the truth. You never know. Had Damian gone down, I think you would have wanted to go to him. That's most likely the scenario, but having faith in all the guys in your running back room definitely helps that. And we haven't heard Andy Reid say anything specific about Shady. Obviously, we all were concerned about the way he carried the ball, but he did that in Philly too. Maybe that finally caught up with him, and maybe Bieniemy had a problem with it. Maybe Andy finally got tired of it. I don't know. Sorry, getting a message here. At the end of the day, I think it was more about holding on to the ball than the way he held the ball. If he hadn't fumbled, I don't think it would have meant anything. So that's really what it comes back to for me. Good question. Mr. Tactics is back. How are you? Where does Spag rank among current defensive schemers? If you say that Saleh and Pete Carroll are better, I won't trust your opinion ever again. Pete Carroll isn't a defensive coordinator anymore. He has concepts, but he's not calling the defenses. Saleh's, he's good. I mean, Rob Marinello's still out there. He's still, I think, better. Spags is up there. He's easily top 10 in my opinion. Just looking at what he did to turn that defense around last season, you got to give him credit for that. Would I put him in the top 5? Maybe not yet. Let's see what happens. But he's getting there. I want to see how they evolve in year 2. Historically, with the Saints, with the Giants, year 2 was the big leap for Spags teams. So hopefully that happens this time too. He has spoken a bit this offseason about understanding how to use his players better. And that's a significant step. So knowing that allows you to get into finer detail, to get the ifs and thens kind of thing going. And I think that's going to help pay off for them. Another one from Testicular. Why is Frank Clark only a closer? What is he doing the first 3 quarters? He's setting up closing. That's honestly how a lot of the experienced chess players work. Set up a guy over and over, especially when you're doing something he hasn't seen on film before. Everybody studies film. So tackles have seen Frank do his job. So he's got to give him a little bit different every single game to throw off. You don't want to have a pattern. You don't want to have, I'm going to pole arm first. I'm going to bull rush you after that. I'm going to try a spin move then. You can't have that same pattern. So it's always kind of hunting around, testing the waters, like what can get him. I think Frank, while he's not as explosive as, say, D Ford, he's not as quick with the first step. I feel like he maintains his explosiveness better through a game. So I feel like in the last quarter, maybe he wasn't up here with the tackle. Maybe they started out about even, right? But as the game wears on, I think Frank maintains better in terms of physicality, in terms of get off. And I think that kind of catches up. So while everybody's, full of vinegar when they first start a ball game, I think Frank endures the game itself a bit better. Now, that's also said that he was fighting multiple injuries all season, and that might have played into it too. Maybe he needs to get warmed up. Maybe he needs to get a hit in. I'm not sure exactly how he works, and every player is a little bit different. But I can see a way that that's what it takes to get him going. The real question is going to be, he's had all this off time. All he had to do was train and stay in shape physically, keep his strength up, keep his cardio up so that he can run, get plays in. All that has taken less of a toll on him than any other offseason he's ever played in the NFL. So I'm real interested to see if it's really helped him pump up what he's able to do. And maybe that sets him up for a better season than we've seen. I certainly hope so. And I think he's still a guy that's ascending on his tactics as well. So that's where we're coming from. And it looks like we have a special guest. I'm going to grab Dan here real quick because Dan joined the show. How are you, bud?
Good. How you guys doing?
I'm going to have to throw headphones on now because I wasn't quite sure if you were going to make it. So, hey, that works just fine.
I would.
And unfortunately, my headphones aren't even working, so it's going to be what it is.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully you guys don't hear an echo. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the next question, and if you want to take it, Dan, go ahead. It's from Cole.
All right, let's see. So let's make the Chiefs to address as far as signing players. Honestly, it's really hard to know that right now with the way that the offseason's gone and just wanting everyone to get in their own bubbles. They're gonna if they want to add players, they're gonna have to address it pretty quickly, and in order to get them in camp and have them already quarantined for the team. So I think that they're kind of just going to ride it out with who they have right now, assuming that the season is a go and get that training camp going as fast as they can and get that bubble established. That's just about all I can really see right now.
And that's very fair. I'm going to unplug and replug this. Don't be alarmed. What's going on with my audio? So, folks, if you have had any trouble hearing me, make sure you hit the comments. It looks like I lost Dan temporarily.
I'm still here.
Are we still here? Can you all see me? Looks like we're still going. Had a little hiccup there. There we go. Okay, I think we're caught up now. If we can fix that, I want to go back to the answer that you just gave because I didn't get to hear all of it.
Okay. I think it's on my end.
It may be. You know what? And this may just be an experiment. So as far as signing players from other teams at the end of the preseason, I think I'm with you there that it's going to be hit or miss. It's going to be whether it comes through at a given time or not. You never know who's going to get cut. So it's difficult to see exactly what kind of precursor you might be able to throw out.
Yeah, I think a lot's going to depend on how many players they end up the NFLPA and the league decides are going to be able to access through the practice squad. They're going to have to settle on a number for how many people or how many players they want to be sent down there for reserve, because they're going to have an extra number of players just because of the whole COVID situation. So I think that's going to play into it as well.
Yeah, I think so. Folks, this is kind of a preview of what we're going to do in the members chats. That's why we're trying it out tonight. Yeah. I'm getting a really bad echo. So, Dan, I think I'm going to let you go for tonight just because equipment issues. But this is the idea, folks. We're going to come back and forth, and it's not just going to be my opinion. You're going to be able to get to Dan one-on-one a little bit too. So, Dan, thanks for jumping in here tonight, though.
Yeah, we'll test it. I'll get it all figured out. Thanks for having me. I will talk to you guys later.
Rock on, man. Okay, folks. Sorry about the hiccup there, but we'll get back to it. And it looks like the mic is not working at all. I'm getting all kinds of messages, so thanks for putting up with this. We're going to go to tactics next one. And PFF says the Kendall Fuller was the highest rated dude for the entire Super Bowl. What was he doing back there? Basically, he was manning a deep zone. He was preventing the over the top. And I actually think he transitioned to safety really, really well. That's not the easiest thing to do, to tell you the truth. It sometimes is a lack of performance just because you're stutter stepping. You're not certain with your reads. And when we found out about the change, we had found that when he was injured earlier in the year, he had actually started taking mental reps as a safety. So that certainly helps. And it gets you ready for that. And by being somebody that they could interchange, it would have been a nice thing. It would have been fine. It would have been a plus if it hadn't been for the fact that Juan Thornhill got hurt and then became something you needed. So not having Thornhill back there really allowed them to move forward and to get the concept of having somebody that can play deep and still knows where everything's going. So credit to Kendall Fuller for how smart he is at the game and their scheme in particular. And it certainly did work. That's where what I think it comes down to it. He didn't have a lot of targets, so PFF is usually pretty kind to that when you're not targeted. So that might have an effect on it too. Good question. Hot and spicy. Do you think that Tyrann Mathieu is a lockdown safety? That's a good question. Normally, that's not a term that I throw around because I find that especially for strong safeties, guys that play closer to the box, and I'm not saying that Tyrann is one, but he lines up as a strong safety quite a bit. If you're playing against tight ends and safeties have a lot more back and forth than a shutdown corner. So that's really difficult to say. But I will tell you this. When Gronk was still around, and we'll see what happens this year, Tyrann Mathieu defended him very well. I think practicing against Kelsey certainly helps. Not that they go ones-on-ones that often, but it does help. And I think that he is a guy that is able to match up with anybody tight end-wise that is the new prototype, long-speed, receiving type tight end. I don't recall him on Kittle specifically when there was a target. I'd have to go back and rewatch the Super Bowl in particular about when Kittle wasn't targeted and Tyrann was on him. But yeah, I think he's as close to a lockdown safety as it comes. But that knowing that safeties and tight ends trade off more. That's a good question. Mr. Jerry, how are you? I'm sorry you haven't been here either, but I'm glad you're back. Thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. Let's see. Who is up? Somebody new. Christo Swag, how are you? I'm Chris. My question is, do you see DOD and Willie Gay being in the future of the linebacker core? I think Willie is brought here to be exactly that. I think Dorian O'Daniel has a chance to make the roster, but I don't think they're projecting him as somebody that will play next to Willie Gay for the future. I think if he has a big season, if he can clamp on to what they're doing in the scheme, I think he can shift that. And I think he can make more plays when he knows more about what he's doing. And that may land him something that keeps him on the roster longer. I just don't know how likely that is. We have to see what Dorian O'Daniel can do. Good question. Mr. Chiefs, Chris, from Oregon. Without total separation of the team and possibly their families, how can the NFL possibly hope to have a safe place for players and fans? That's the big conundrum. And specifically, what they're talking about is a bubble. And that's the hardest part, is they're trying to sell to the players that, hey, you're gonna sleep at a hotel facility, you're gonna work in the facility, you're not gonna see your families. And I mean, quarantining them basically from their families for 6 months for a season, and no player is gonna go for that. But the alternative is exposing your families to the virus. And there are a lot of players. I think you guys heard what Malcolm Jenkins said last week. It was on the podcast. But Tyreek Hill has his small children and his parents living with him. There are other players on this team that have either or both. So subjecting the families to that from what is a work-borne illness is difficult. And I don't think you can provide a safe way to do that. Testing is great. You have to have that. But testing isn't prevention. It doesn't keep it from spreading. It only allows you to react once you know. And everybody's different. Some people spike a fever, from what I've read of the medical journals, anywhere from 24 to 96 hours. It's somewhere in between there. You start to shed virus and you are contagious. And there's no cleanup for that. There is no medical assertion that the NFL could put in place. So you can't blame the NFL. There just isn't a way around it. And I've heard a lot lately, and you'll hear more about this in tomorrow's video, about the possibilities of having some delays, delaying the season, delaying camp. The NFL is talking out both sides of their mouth right now about canceling the Hall of Fame game, but then still trying to open camp the week before. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and we're going to have to see how it all comes down. I really don't know how it's going to go. Let's see. Steve, were teams more physical and tackling in the 90s compared to today? Yes, most definitely and consistently. That's the thing. Today, you'll get some big hits, but the targeting rule, the crown of the helmet rule, I guess I should call it, targeting in college, sorry, that changes things. But also, you've seen in the last 10 years where players want to make big hits, and they come up and they lead with a shoulder and they don't wrap up and they don't make contact because they whiff a lot. The short area quickness of skill position players on offense has gotten better in the last 20 years. It's not as easy to bring guys down. And when you just throw your body at where you think he's going to be, that doesn't help. So not only is it more difficult to hit those targets, it's also more difficult when you're not breaking down. You can still deliver a lot of power being broken down. So I would like to see some more form tackling come back. And that's one thing that Pete Carroll teaches. And I think that's really important, at least for some of the older school coaches, to continue to teach NFL players. That's not a very common sight. Good question, Steve. Mr. Alleg, how are you? With all this COVID-19 and abbreviated offseason or lack of offseason, what's it going to do to Thornhill and his recovery? Well, here's the lucky part. It's not going to hurt him at all, because quite frankly, he was never planned to participate in OTAs. He was never somebody that they were counting on to put in reps before training camp. He's actually been, quote unquote, cleared, and that's only a preliminary step. It's got to be finalized, to run and participate in camp. So he was never going to do anything before that. The good thing is, for a guy who isn't at OTAs, the OTAs are aimed at the field normally. By having this virus and having the team have to back off and do all this virtual stuff makes a big difference. And because they're doing that, it made him fall less behind. Quite frankly, this is a near perfect scenario for Juan Thornhill, because he's been able to work out and work on his rehab and not worry about anything else. All the meetings have been virtual, so he hasn't missed anything. And that's not something that you can say every year. So I think for him in particular, it couldn't have gone any better in terms of a scenario for him to heal, work on his specific rehab, his physiological changes, and get all the mental reps from being in these Zoom meetings, these virtual classes that I think in the end are going to make him only better. So we'll see when he hits the field, when they actually have a practice. I don't know when that's going to be. But when it happens, I have a feeling he may be a little tentative physically, but mentally he's going to be more prepared than maybe he would have if he had been not participating with his teammates in a regular OTA. Great question. Gary, what's more important with the Chiefs' first pick in the draft, a CB or a left tackle? That's a good question. I don't agree with what Brett Veach has done to this point. They are clearly not stressing the cornerback position because they feel that the safeties are going to help them. They've had opportunity to go get corner talent. They're happy getting lower round picks. So I don't know that they're going to put a corner in the top row anyway. I personally would. I still think that that's probably the biggest need on this team. Left tackle is interesting because I do agree, tackle of some kind. Niang is kind of there, I think, as a hopeful guy that can play swing for a year or two and then take over for one of the current starting tackles, because both those guys are approaching the age where their performance will start to fall off. So the question becomes, can Niang play right and left, or is he really just a right? He's only ever played right, so that's kind of how I feel. So it's a good point that you bring up the left tackle position, and that may be a spot. From what I hear so far, this left tackle class is supposed to be pretty good. Not earth-shattering, but pretty good. And I'm going to adjust here since I feel like I'm falling down in the frame, but hey, it is what it is. So you could certainly prepare and get another bookend tackle that you feel needs a year or two to develop, maybe physically, maybe strength-wise, and get him into the process so that you're prepared. And I think that's perfectly fine. First super chat. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate the support. Thank you for your super chat. And your question is, with the versatility of our safeties, do you feel that that helps the corner position? It certainly does. And that goes in a couple of different ways. Specifically, Thornhill and Mathieu, when they're playing deep, they have the ability to take away the deep end, which allows the corners to play more physical early in the route. And if they fall behind in the route, they know they have help over the top. That's certainly a plus. But it's also a plus because they're getting better, and the corners are very young. But what we saw from Spagnuolo in year one is deception, much more so than Bob Sutton ever showed. And what that does is allow a specific rep, a specific play to be set up better so that the corner doesn't have to deal with a straight fly pattern or something like that, because the offense isn't quite sure what's going on. And that's what some of those invert deals are, where you saw Fuller do it, you saw Fenton do it when they're in the nickel and they go all the way to the high safety. It makes me nervous, but it is very effective in throwing off where the routes should be, given what you're showing them pre-snap. And the other way that it does it is that you can switch responsibilities. You can roll underneath as well. There's a lot of versatility that you can do when you have safeties that can cover ground and are natural, instinctive players against passes, going up for them, knocking them away, etc. And both Mathieu and Thornhill are those guys. So I think it does help all the way around. Great question, and thank you for the super chat. Does Cam make the Patriots challengers to the Bills? On paper, probably. It's still an adjustment phase. Trying to work with the current Patriots targets is going to be a learning curve for him. Quite frankly, Josh McDaniels' offense isn't known to be very simple. It also is a challenge. I wouldn't call it equal to Andy Reid's terminology, but it's not as basic as a lot of the offenses in the league. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge now when you've had zero TAs, even virtual, to work from. Being signed this late is a bit of troublesome. It's going to be interesting. I think it makes them a contender against the Bills. Yes, I feel the Bills are a better roster overall, but it all depends on how Cam comes back. If he's truly healed, like 2018 Cam, yeah, he makes them formidable to the point where I'm not sure the Bills can put up the number of points. I think the Bills are a very good defensive team right now, but I'm not sure they can score with a Cam-led both rushing and passing offense. Now, if Cam is still bothered, if he's still the guy, I know the foot fracture has probably healed by now, but it still can make you tentative. It can still be painful depending if there's bone spurs or something that comes along with the healing. If he's not 100% and he's still more one-dimensional and he doesn't have the threat of breaking the pocket and running, I don't know that it helps them as much. If you're going to have somebody just stand in the pocket, they think Stidham knows the offense pretty well and can deliver the ball from the pocket. The question is, can he do anything outside of it? And the answer is no. But if Cam can't do anything outside of the pocket, then it's about the same scenario. I think Cam's arm is stronger, but I haven't seen either of them in quite a while, so that's rhetoric at this point. Aaron, I see you. That would be awesome. We can definitely try to do that. And folks, what we're talking about is Aaron, Dan, Danilo will be back eventually. And I'm going to add more folks to the channel. And what the members will be able to do is get on a Zoom where we can all just talk. It won't just be me reading your text. It will be a video chat. And that's something, one of the perks that we're going to do that takes some coordination, but I think it's going to work out. Let's see. Chris, if the season gets shortened or worse, would they consider not counting this year against contracts and salaries for the players this year, kind of a reset? No, there will be none. If they play, and I believe the minimum is, I want to say it's a 9-game season, is what the CBA's, I haven't read the new one, but the old one I think listed a 9-game season as a legitimate season. If they don't play that many games, I think you could get a reset. But if they do, it would count as a full season. That's my understanding right now. I don't know that section of it very well, so I might need to research that a little bit, but that's my understanding as we talk tonight. Let's see. Here we go. Lucas, D-Rob or Pringle for the wide receiver 5 position? That is a very good question. And right now, I would think the D-Rob is still 4. Clearly, Hardman is above him since they were willing to let him go. But I think he does slide right back into that 4 spot. I would put Pringle at 5, and the question is whether they're going to keep 6. If they do, I could see the rookie Kalijah Lipscomb make some noise. I really like his college film. And I think as a UDFA, you always have some UDFAs make it, and I think he's as likely as any of the others. I could see Jody Fortson make it, pushing both – in both those cases, those guys pushing Garrett Dieter off the roster. Jacob Callahan, how are you? Do you think Lucas Niang will be the starter next year and we trade one of our higher dollar O linemen, and who? I don't think they're going to trade any of their linemen. They're not going to trade Mitch Schwartz. Mitch Schwartz will finish his career in Kansas City is my guess, unless he really pushes it past the end of his contract. I'm not sure that'll happen. And I don't think there's much trade value for anybody else. Eric Fisher is a good tackle. Is he going to draw anything more than a 5th-round pick? Probably not. And I think they feel these days that the college players coming out are at such a disadvantage that it's all about athleticism that I don't think anybody's going to value an older offensive lineman for anything that they'll trade for. So the question is, does Niang become a starter? My guess is that both Fisher and Schwartz are back for 2021, and then you could maybe see Niang work his way in 2022. That's my initial thought when I looked at the contracts, and I don't have them up in front of me, but I believe Schwartz and Fisher are both under contract for 2021, and I'm not sure they both are for 2022. Pono Kwai, how are you? What type of schemes is CEH going to excel at, and what fun things is Andy drawing up? That's a great question. And I talked about that a little bit on the podcast today, too. You guys should be able to listen to that tonight or tomorrow on the drive. The key, and this is what CEH does that Damian doesn't do, is catch over the middle. The arrow route at LSU was key for him, and he was great at it. And you're going to get plenty outside. You're going to get plenty in the slot with Hardman and Kelsey, but it's about attacking in between the hashes. And I think that's where CEH can either slide through smaller gaps in the offensive line or do the out and in and be in a really good position to exploit linebackers. Whereas Damian, I feel, is better on the swings and the wheels and the screens. Now, CEH can run screens too. I don't remember seeing a bunch of big plays off of screens for him. So I think the way that they go about it's going to be a little bit different. And I do anticipate that they will both be here. I don't think that they're going to try to water down their running back room at all. Brett Veach was very adamant about the attrition they went through last year and not having enough running backs. So I really do feel that that's going to be the key for them. Great question. Hot and spicy. With the 3rd-round pick, who would you take that's not Niang? Oh, you mean last year's. So not Niang in the 3rd. I was looking at, who was it? I think it was Bryce. No. Not Bryce Callahan. The corner from Virginia, I think he lasted that long, and I was surprised they didn't take him there. A ball hawk, but a zone guy. And I think that's in the end why they didn't, is he was zone specific. His man skills were not what I think the Chiefs were looking for. And so they went with Niang, and I'm okay with that. I had Niang a little bit lower, mostly because of the injury. Actually, I lied. I had him right where he was taken. I actually pinged that one pretty well. I had him higher earlier in the year until he got hurt, and then I lowered him down to where he was. So I think they could have gone corner there. Clearly, they went corner the next round, so it was on their radar for a little bit lower down, not a first-round pick, but I think they could have done that. FAKC, is Cam going to take the pass to the playoffs? That's a very good question. I could see them making a wild card right now. I really can. And again, I do feel like overall the Bills are a better team mostly. I think this makes it really even. I think this could be an interesting series to watch for us as Chiefs backers. But I think it's going to be a bit of a battle. And it all, again, depends on how Cam looks and how he runs, how he feels. So we'll have to see how that all comes down. Hot and spicy. Do you think the Pats are a threat? Possibly, and especially if Cam's healthy when if they make the playoffs, I think there'll be a wild card. If they do and he's healthy, then you got to account for him, and I think that's going to be interesting. Longmorn 16, a great Scotch and a great person. Thank you for your questions. Do you think that Jones is worth big money? I think if his first move gets stuffed, he takes the play off. His big plays in the fourth quarter, he lost his battle and then knocked down passes. I guess that's fair to say. Like, he didn't get the rush that he wanted, but knocking down a pass was critical to winning that game. So I won't hold that against him. I do think he is worth big money. As a penetrative player, he definitely is one of the top. The question for me is, I don't think he's worth $20 million a year. I don't think he makes that much of an effect on the game. I don't think he's great on first down. I think he gets run on. I think he takes plays off. I agree with you there. But most of the time, when he does get stymied with his first move, he does try to do something else. It's just not terribly effective. And again, that's not a $20 million player to me. I would pay him between 17 and 18 and call it good. But I'm not running this team. Aaron, I think Lipscomb takes the 6th spot. Do you? And if not, who? I agree with you. I think he might be pushing it. And Jody would be the next one that I would choose. Wide receivers, which one? There's a couple of interesting guys they brought in as UDFAs. I think more for kick return kind of duties, but they're quick. A lot of small guys, not many big guys, and that's why I keep Fortson in the back of my head. Jerry, what's up? What are your thoughts on Cam when the Pats is a one-year deal? Is it worth talking about? Yeah, I mean, not worrying about. No, I won't worry about it, but it is interesting. It's something to keep an eye on. I think the Bills are going to do a good job trying to beat him up, so I think we'll be okay. When are you and Chris getting back together on the Locked On show? That's going to be a good question. It's been really difficult because I don't know if you guys know, Chris works in accounting. And after tax day, everything kind of changed for him. And he's starting a new job, and that's why we haven't been able to record together. Like, schedules are just way off. So I've been doing most 3 days a week. He's been doing 2 days a week just to keep everything going because we haven't had time to sit down and get together. I'm hoping that changes, but we won't know for a while until he gets kind of in the groove of the new job and that kind of thing, and we know when his available time is going to be. Because my family requirements too, like I'm not home a lot of evenings because I have sports and that kind of stuff, and my kids are back in sports, so it's difficult. It definitely is a process that I douse them with hand sanitizer from nose to fingertip, but it's definitely a process. Cole, do you think that with the right conditions and elevation, or both, Butker could break Prater's longest field goal record, possibly the 77-year distance that he did at the park outside KC? I could not put it past him. It would take a pretty high pressure front from what I understand. And here with the dry air, it definitely could happen. If it does, I haven't missed a Chiefs-Broncos game here in Colorado for a lot of years. If it does happen, I will be there. That's a great question. Let's see. Oh, I'm way behind on the chat. Pono, have you sided on either side on the Adams for Chris trade? I haven't. It's difficult. It all comes down to me. If both teams feel that they're never going to get a contract done, if that's the case, you got to get what you can get. If you don't think that you're ever going to get Chris to agree to a dollar amount that you're willing to pay, then I think Brett Veach has to go look for an option. And in today's NFL, why not go get more coverage? The Chiefs are in a unique position in that they use three safeties so much that it really could pay off for them in fielding those guys. It gets them younger at the safety position too. Tyron's, he's great now. 4 years from now, I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think he's signed through 2021, and I think he will get another contract then. I just don't know how long it'll last. Everybody kind of hits the wall at their own time. But so, it all depends on how they feel. And because I have no insight into the negotiations for Chris Jones right now, I really can't say how I feel one way or the other. We keep hearing that they're not talking, that they haven't had communication. And if that's true, that's a bad sign, but it doesn't mean you're never going to. Again, this next 2 weeks, this rush to the deadline could be the thing that breaks it all loose. But at the same time, it could be something that they finally make the realization that he'll play on the tag, but he's never going to sign for what we have to sign him for. And the quarterback comes first. So you have to pay Mahomes. That's the key. Everything else is gravy when it comes down to it. So I think if you get to that point where you just don't feel that he's ever going to sign a contract for what the Chiefs want to pay him, then I think you have to see him sign the tag and try to trade him. And the same thing has to be true for the Jets. And so far, they haven't said that it is. He can demand all he wants. He can ask for a trade left, right, all day long, and it doesn't have to happen. The key is he's saying things that make you indicate that it would, because he's saying, I don't have to have a contract right away. So that makes more teams willing to trade for him. Now, if I'm the Jets, I don't want Chris Jones. I want draft picks. But it's an administration that hasn't gone very well. You have a fairly new GM. I think this is his second season. You got to get some traction. And a defensive impact player like Chris Jones might be able to do that in a way that helps you against your division more than the safety does, possibly. It's just a question of fit. And again, it comes back to if both teams feel that they can't get something done long term. Great question. Jerry, took it down. What's your thoughts about Saunders? Is he going to start this year? Seems like he's lost a little weight and gotten faster. And that's what he needs to do. He played at 325 last year. He needs to play about 310. 305 would be great. And Saunders is quick. He's not as strong as Chris Jones, but his first step is close. So if you're looking at eventually replacing Chris, Colin Saunders is where you got to look, at least on the roster right now, because Derek Nottie is going to start at the nose, at the 110. And honestly, Mike Pennell can probably play that just as well as he can play the 3. Mike Pennell is a run stopper. He doesn't give you that much in the pass rush, although he had a couple of nice plays. The keys for the future has to be Colin Saunders. And I just don't know how fast that's going to come. You saw him get beat up early against the run because he didn't have the anchor. He got that. He did that. Now he has to get back to what he was in college, which was an explosive, penetrating pass rusher. If he can do that, and I do think that he can, I think he's going to have a big impact. Steve Concepcion, is Mahomes more responsible for winning the Super Bowl than Andy? No, he is not. It goes hand in hand. It is 51-49 as far as I'm concerned. Another quarterback couldn't have done what he did. I will give him credit. The watch play seemed like it was on him from everything that we saw. But none of that happens without Andy scheming you up and getting there. And quite frankly, getting you through those times when you were down 24 points. The quarterback can't do that in himself. He has to have good plays to run. And so I do think a little bit more still lies on Reed. Corey's here, the Artist Chief. Everybody check him out. He's got a channel on here, and you can find him at Artist Chief on Twitter as well. What's up, Corey? Are you coming to KC for the first preseason game? If not, you should. I would like to, but I will not be. I don't think I'll be getting on a plane in 2020. That's just how I feel. Not something I'm willing to subject myself to in terms of being on there with somebody that could be sick. So 2021 is going to be it, man. Thanks for asking, though. We can do a virtual one. How's that? Christo, do you see Diodenge as the future linebacking core? Answered that one. Sorry, it took me a while. Pono, do you think there's a possibility that CEH and Willie Jr. both take Rookies of the Year? I think it's a strong possibility. It's a good question. Both of them right now are in positions to play accompanying roles. I don't think they're going to be put in a position, especially early, where they have to produce big plays. I think that will come later in the season. And so if you're not somebody that's going to be fed the ball if you're CEH constantly over and over, and if you're not somebody that's going to be sent blitzing a lot or really schemed up for if you're Willie, I don't think that half a season is going to give you that ability. There are rookies that are going to make, I think, bigger impacts. But you never know. If they get going, I think both of them have the opportunity to pick something up pretty fast and really make a lot of headway. So I won't rule it out, that's for sure. Steve, why won't the league raise the number on the active roster to 60 or more? Wouldn't that reduce the risk of injuries? Wouldn't necessarily reduce the risk, but it would give you more fodder. I think what they're trying to do is not allow you to stack a roster that the other team has trouble preparing for. You know what I mean? Like having weird one-off players that produce different plays. I think they're trying to level the playing field there some. I don't know that I agree with that, but I think that's what they're trying to do. Testicular, let me guess, you worship Christian Okoye. Not necessarily, but I enjoyed watching him play. My favorite back in history is Walter Payton. I think he is the most complete back, and I'll take him over anybody. Barry, Emmett, anyone, I don't care. I'll take Walter Payton every time. Christian Okoye was an unstoppable force unless you schemed around it. 46 defense could stop Christian Okoye because there wasn't enough gap to run, and he didn't have the breakaway speed. But yeah, I love the way that he played. I'm glad you're paying attention, Tactics. Rank the following: Peyton, Breeze, Brady. Also, that's how I rank them, where Peyton is the best. Okay, so you mean overall for their careers. Whew, that's tough. I will put Breeze third, just from a lack of championships. Peyton. Here's the thing. I give Peyton a lot of credit because he won in both places. Both he and Tom Brady called their offenses. That's a toss-up. Everyone's going to give it to Brady because of the volume of championships. I think, quite frankly, Peyton had a bigger impact on his team than Tom Brady did in terms of the ability to throw and how he lifted his competitors on his team. So I think I would probably go with you. I would just drop Breeze to 3. That's not a question. That one is, do you think Denzel Mims is the steal of the draft? If not, who? Mims is going to be interesting. He doesn't get off press that great, but he'll have to learn a few things. I think he might turn into a very good player. Steal of the draft is a good question, and I don't recall. I remember thinking someone was going to be that when the selection was made. Now I can't remember who it was. I think no, that wasn't it. I'll have to think about that one, Spicy. I'll get back to you. Does Gay get Defensive Rookie of the Year? If he starts all year, he might have a shot at it. What's your initial reaction to Cam Newton signing? I covered that a little bit ago. Sorry I'm so far behind here, you guys. That microphone thing kind of threw me off. Cole, I recently found out that Mecole Hardman's a converted corner. Would you feel comfortable with the prospect of him playing both sides of the ball if necessary? I mean, if absolutely necessary. If 6 corners get hurt, okay. But they moved him to wide receiver because he wasn't performing that well as a corner. Certainly isn't going to be able to do that as jumping up to the NFL level. So no, I would not want to see him do that. Thomas, thank you again. Another super chat. You're the man. And Aaron, if I missed any super chats, you make sure to let me know. I think I got them so far, though. Do you think that the way the game is played now, it's harder to have a shutdown corner compared to just a good scheme? I think it is. I think that particularly holding and interference are called so often now for what used to be ticky-tack. I think it's more beneficial to be aggressive and nasty in the press within the 5 yards than it is to do anything else down the field. And I think that's how the Chiefs feel as well. That's why they're not placing any priority. I still would like to have one corner that you can say can take away a number 1 receiver. And I don't think the Chiefs have that. I would like to have that, but clearly they don't think it's a priority. Clinton, what, in your opinion, do you think the league or teams will do for season ticket holders if no fans are in the stadium, especially in the lower deck? Well, clearly, if they're not going to allow fans into the stadiums, then you don't sell them the tickets. So you're not spending the money on them. I would think that they'll come up with something creative, like, a subscription feed that gives them access to like a camera that's mounted on the sideline or something special that season ticket holders can have the opportunity to purchase that gives them a different experience than just watching the broadcast. That would be my guess. But really, I just don't know. Christo, do Mecole and Sammy swap places? No. They all kind of move around. I think Sammy ran like 38% from the slot last year. Mecole's good. He doesn't want to be the X. If you line him up at X, he's going to get pressed, and he doesn't do very well against the press. So no, I think you still want to see Mecole in the slot predominantly. Oh, hot and spicy. Why didn't the Chiefs re-sign Mitch Morse? Concussions. They just didn't think that long term he was a guy that was going to be able to stay healthy, and he's had a couple of injuries in Buffalo as well. Sorry. Whoop. Missed that one. Man, these things fly by. Good Lord, I must be way behind. Okay, so Curtis, thank you for your super chat. How do we, the NFL, keep 54 players and coaches in a secure bubble for 6 months? These guys have families and want to drink and chase tail. Well, yeah, they do. That's what happens when you're a 24-year-old millionaire. Yeah, I can understand that. And that's the big rub. The older players don't want to be exposed to the virus because of their families, is my thought. The younger players don't want to be cooped up in a hotel with their teammates for 6 months. And that's the thing, is right now, those seem to be the most likely way that this has to go. And it's just not going to fly with the players. It is going to come down to, do you want a season or don't you? And for players, especially those that are approaching their contract years, they want that season. So it's going to be interesting to see how it comes down. Thanks for the super chat. I appreciate it. Jimmy, in the event that this goes bad, no football in 2020, what happens to the show for an entire year? What will you do for content? Well, now that you mention it, you guys have heard me go through what this offseason's become. And this offseason's gotten stretched. So there will continue to be rumors of trades and whatnot. If they don't have a season, you will see Dan more as Dan and I attack the film for the next draft. We will be hard and heavy on the draft class coming for 2021 because we have all their film already, or a lot of their film anyway. If they don't have a season, if the NFL doesn't play, there's no way there's a college team, college season. They will have already canceled. The NFL will be the last one standing, I guarantee you. They will not throw in the towel before college does. So that would mean that there was no college season, which means the 2019 film from college is going to be gold. And we will be all over that up and down all off season. We will explore and redo film and offensive reviews from last year. I will start pulling defensive scheme from Spag from years past. On Game Pass on the NFL, you can go back, I think it's 2008. So I can get to New Orleans and I can get to New York for Spags, and I'll be able to pull some of that for you guys. We'll have plenty to talk about, I guarantee you. Israel Mukuamu. I don't know his name off the top of my bat. Nice question. Why not? I will try to come up with that. Ian, nice to see you back. Do you think that Chris Conley was used incorrectly during his time in KC? He should have been a stud. I absolutely agree. Here's the thing. He didn't do what the offense does. The offense is not a jump ball offense. Andy doesn't want to throw fades and jump balls. No one's done that in Kansas City since Tony left. So I think it was a mismatch. They had hoped to train him into a guy that ran the routes that they wanted, the way that they wanted. His acceleration was too gradual. He's a strider. And I think his abilities are getting downfield on long routes, but also in the leaping, and they just didn't want to use it that way. Good question or point. Curtis, do you see the NFLPA pushing back against the NFL for wanting to play games if there are certain criteria not met? Absolutely. The NFLPA is going to be a big force in this. In fact, they just put out something today warning all agents to get with their clients before mid-July and update them on the CDC's guidelines for safety protocols, because they're going to start making a push to make sure that every facility all across the league is 100% in line with the CDC recommendations. Hot and spicy. Did the Chiefs take Mike Danna when they could have gotten players like Bradley and I? Oh, why did they? Because they liked him. They scouted him a lot. And Sperduto's the guy that scouted him, and they trust Sperduto a lot. They scouted him at Central Michigan when he was going to be a steal because he hadn't been on the national scene, and then he grad transferred to Michigan, and they stuck him inside at a 3 technique, and he actually played pretty good for a guy that should be playing on the edge at like 255 pounds. So they really like what he brings. And it's Bradley and I he's got some good speed. I don't think he's overly powerful, and I don't think he's a mature pass rusher. I don't think he can go back inside. When you look at what Spags wants, he wants power ends that can shift down to a 3 tech if they have to. That's exactly what Mike Danna is, and that's why they took him over a 9. Kansas Carolina, worst case scenario, if COVID gets worse and games are canceled, at what point do they call the season? That's a really good question. I think if they get to the point and they can't play games until 2021, I think they might call it. They might try to do a 10-game season in January if they have to. Certainly the success of the television for the developmental leagues has made them think, hey, there's an appetite for football in the spring. And certainly if there hasn't been an NFL season, I think that they could see that. But if it gets to be where you still can't play games, and I don't even care about the fans, and I don't think the league does either. As long as they can play games with their personnel, their players and coaches safely, they will play. If they can't do that by February, I think they'll just cancel it. Those are my thoughts. Casey K, how are you? Who will lead our Chiefs in sacks and ints this year? My money's on Chris Jones and Thornhill. My money's going to be on Mathieu. Mathieu has been outspoken about how many interceptions he dropped last year. So I think he's got an axe to grind with himself. And I think it's going to be Frank Clark. Concepcion, what does the Chiefs Super Bowl win mean for the smaller market teams? What city would you like to be awarded an NFL franchise? I'd like to see San Diego get a franchise again. I think their fans got done dirty by the Spanos family. I think that needs to be fixed. And for the smaller markets, it just proves that if you put your money into scouting and preparation, that you can get yourself a franchise quarterback in the draft and make an impact. You have to have a signal caller as well, but I think that's what it says. James Raymond, who do you think is the most overrated pick in this draft? I was thinking it was Herbert. I like Herbert. He might have gone a little high, but who was the guy? Oh, I can't remember. It might have been Ruggs. What did Ruggs go, 11? No, I can't remember. I think Ruggs was good. I don't know if he was worth that, but we'll see. Overrated. That's a really good question. I'm going to have to come up with that one. Curtis, thoughts on the fine of 1.1 1/3 for the Pats for cheating? I think it's grossly inadequate. They've done this before. They've filmed teams before, and third round? I thought they lost a first for the deflate thing. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. It feels like a slap on the wrist, and I think it's favoritism still a little bit. I think it sucks. Info, if the cap stays even, won't it go up for a few years? Does it basically mean we have to let everyone other than Mahomes walk next year? If it stays even, you're fine. You have some things that you have to do, but even is good. The problem is if there's no fans and seats or this season doesn't happen, the salary cap gets cut in half. They're talking about if they don't play games with at least 50% occupancy for ticket sales, that they're going to lose $3 billion. Well, it's 6.4 for the salary cap for 32 teams. So that's half. So the next year, if you have to make it all up, and they've talked about spreading it out, but worst case scenario, if they have to make it all up the next season, you're talking about a salary cap of $99 million. Then everyone's screwed. And so they'll have to do something about that because you can't even cover the contracts you have, let alone do something new. Steven Spies, what about the Chris contract, or will they trade him? That's what we've been talking about. I think he plays on the tag. I don't think either of those actually happens. Please reword that. Oh, okay. Gotcha. That wasn't for me. Do you have an early favorite defensive tackle in next year's draft? I have not started to look at them yet, to tell you the truth. I probably should. And clearly, if there's any delay, that's one of the positions I'll be looking at right away. I'm looking at offensive line so far. The kid from Ohio State, guard, man, he's intriguing. Check him out if you have a chance. And I'll give you a report here early in the fall. Dylan Kruckman, thanks for your super chat as always. Who's the dark horse on the O-line this year? Darrell Williams. I just think that he's nasty in a way that Ryder isn't. I think he's athletic enough to play in this league. I think he should have been drafted and wasn't. I'm not sure why. But he is the dark horse. He's a UDFA that I think could make this roster. Okay, there you go. That was Aaron. Why not? What do you think? Okay, asked and answered. Sorry, I'm catching up, you guys. Does Bo Pete see the field this year? I think he might. He's in the right position group to get a chance as a low-end draft pick. I think he will. Aaron, does Levert make the 53? And do you try to sign him to the practice squad? And if so, does he stick on our roster or someone steal him? Looks like they're expanding the practice squad, and that's going to make it easier to steal. So I would say, depending on is it going to be the top three and then Snead, Bo Pete, and Levert? That's kind of how I think. That's the ranking that I have for them, Aaron. Steve, why did he reward players that performed well with high-paying contracts when there was no guarantee of future success? Because if they don't, they lose them. If you are unwilling to pay a guy who's performed for you, if you're not going to do it, someone else will. And so it becomes a chess match. Do you think he can repeat it? That's why they use the franchise tag. That's why Chris Jones is on the franchise tag. He had a good season in 2018. They needed him to do it again. He did pretty well. I know he had a couple of games off, not quite as good, but he missed a few games. Now they're going to make him prove it. And that's why they're holding strong to their number. And they will continue to until they have to back off of it. Or they just decide to let him go. That's what it's going to come down to. Would it make more sense to give a bonus and an increase one-year contract? It would, but players don't want that. Players want the security. So even if you offer that, most of the time players aren't going to take it, especially if they're in Chris Jones' position. Jason Streeter, if the NFL cuts the preseason game from 2 to 4, how will the coaches evaluate the young players, young guys to make the 53? It'll be difficult. It's a question of games. It doesn't mean that they're going to cut the training camp short or the preseason itself. I think you can still see the same length of practices of preseason. You'll have more practices, less games. And so that's how you will do your evaluation. Now, the Chiefs are in a lucky position that they have a Super Bowl roster. So they're only talking about evaluating the young guys in 6 or 8 spots, whereas a lot of teams have 20-ish that they got to figure out. So Chiefs definitely have an advantage there. Kansas Carolina, are you still thinking about doing play-by-play for the Chiefs games this season? I am. I'm just trying to find a platform that will let me do it well. And a lot of that is dependent on my internet service, as you guys know. But there are some other factors as well. And if I can find somebody that'll do it right, I will do it. We'll at least try it out. Maybe I suck at it, you guys. You never know. Let's see. Is Andy Isabella getting lost? Should we have given a low-round draft pick for him? Should we give? Michael, I don't think the Cardinals want to let him go. That's for sure. I don't think Andy Isabella is available. If I were them, I want somebody underneath Hopkins to try and give some variation in pattern depth. So no, and quite frankly, the Chiefs are probably, it might be their strongest position outside of the quarterback. So no, I don't think you need to do anything drastic at the wide receiver spot. Ryan White, do you believe that management will keep more of these UDFA wide receivers than usual on the practice squad, basically as a red shirt? Yes, I do think that they will. They've done that in years past. They had Felton and Fenton and a couple of other guys last year. The practice squad's a good place for them. There are a lot of wide receivers in the league, so that can actually work out pretty well. Why not? I answered you about Israel earlier. I don't know him off the top of my head. I'll have to take a look. Jerry, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Not sure how to say that one. Sounds like a TV station, to tell you the truth. Are Chris Jones' best days ahead of him or behind him? That is a very good question. A lot of players slack off once they get paid, and I think that's one of the concerns the Chiefs have. I think it's a toss-up. It's 50-50, flip a coin right now. How high will we rank in total offense, in total defense? Can it be top 10? Top 10 might be pushing it, but I think they could be top 15. I think they could push for top 12. Let me put it that way. Christo, what do you think will happen if Pat acted like Jamal Adams? I know he wouldn't, but it's a fun question. If he acted like Adams in what sense? Because I don't think Adams has been outlandish. He said he wanted to be a Jet. He said he wanted to get paid. They wouldn't pay him, and now he wants out. I think that's perfectly reasonable for a guy of his age and talent level, let's say. Neil, I appreciate that. Scouting for college means you have to scout college player or high school players. Not my thing. I can barely get around to the college guys, but I do support the Jayhawks, and if they need help in any other way, I'm happy to help them. Harry Mills, thank you very much. I appreciate your contribution. I'm glad you dig it. I know it's a transition for a lot of the APers coming over here. It's a different world these days. So welcome, and I'm glad you're here, and your perspective is warranted and appreciated. Jerry, hit the button. Yeah, please hit the button, folks. Mad Max, thank you for your super chat. I know it's not Chiefs related, but what do you think about the Pat signing Cam? I talked about that earlier. I think it's a good move for them, and I think it could be troublesome for the Bills. I'm not sure if it makes them something the Chiefs have to worry about, but I could see them making it as a wild card, and that could probably be problematic for the Chiefs. At the end of the day, I don't think Cam and the new offense run by McMinney with their weapons is a serious threat to outscore the Chiefs. So I'm comfortable. Okay, last couple, you guys. Nathan, who will be this year's mystery last-second IR designation so that they can keep them on the roster? I think it might be Lipscomb. He's the guy that I'm thinking of. If he just can't quite crack the roster, I think they might get him injured just so he can go on the practice squad. Aaron. Oh, Todd Perry, thanks. I'm sorry I missed that. Will Armani Watts make the team? Yes, he definitely will. Right now, they don't really have any depth behind Thornhill. It's Thornhill, Matthew, Sorensen, and Watts. Technically, they don't have another safety because they drafted Snead as a corner. Snead can play safety, though. He's that tweener. But I think that would be irresponsible to go in the season with only 3 true safeties when you play 3 safeties that much. So, yeah, I think Watts is a shoo-in. Michael, will Veach lean to trying to force a trade before the deadline with CJ? What about trading the Rams for Jalen Ramsey, free agent 21, and Donald Jones? Donald and Jones together would be scary. Yes. They won't trade for Ramsey. They had that opportunity before and were not that interested. He wants a big contract as well. And quite frankly, he's too much like Marcus Peters. They don't want that attitude in their locker room. They want team-first guys no matter what. And I don't think that is Jalen Ramsey. Also, they're just not prioritizing corner, so I don't think that they would make a large investment in that. In terms of trying to get a trade done, I can see them trying. Force is a tough word because they don't really have any way to force him. He's on the tag. He can either sit out the year or he can play on the tag. Those are his only options. It's the team's option whether he plays for them or they try to move him. So then it comes down to, again, if you don't feel you can sign him long-term, do you want to try to move him? And they might. We'll have to see. It's kind of a long shot. I mean, it's very much a long shot, but it might happen. Why not? If Justin Ross is healthy, would you like him as a first-round pick? He's up there. Chase is going to be a sophomore, so he's not going to be eligible. So, yeah, I mean, I think Ross popped out on tape to me a couple of times. Opposite, what was it, Dean was their other guy? So, yeah, I mean, I just don't know. First-round pick on a wide receiver, even in this offense, I don't know that I relish, but I think Andy might. So that's the way that works. Who are you taking in the top 4 seeds? In the AFC, it would be the Chiefs. I think the Bills win their division. I'm leaning towards Atlanta in the South, I got to tell you. And I think the Ravens are clearly the number 2 team in the AFC. UDFAs, do you think can make the team? I just did that on the podcast last week. I think Darrell Williams and Lavert Hill are the leaders. I think Javaris Davis has a good shot. And there was somebody else that I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, Lipscomb. Those are the 4 that I think have a real good shot to make the roster. Can the Chiefs sweep the AFC West, Maximo? They absolutely can. And I think at this point I expect it. Nathan, last question, and then I will thank you all for your time tonight. What you've seen from Thornhill isn't ready at the beginning of the year. Will it be Watts or Snead as the free safety in the 3 safety sets? I know Fuller filled it in last year. That's a really good question. You would think that it would be Watts, but Snead is really good. I mean, like, I feel like he should have been drafted in the 3rd round. That's how good he is. So it just depends how quickly he picks up the defense. I think it could end up being Snead, but we're going to have to see. So thank you guys for being here. Thanks, everyone, for the Super Chats tonight. Thanks for all the views that you guys have been giving us lately. I know you guys are diehards, but it's been nice to see the uptick. We are going to have videos. Tomorrow's rumors, film on Wednesday, and our breakdown on Thursday, and then we'll take a little break. But we're going to go 4 days a week all the way through, and I'll throw some bonus episodes on Friday, Saturday, too. So I appreciate all the time and all the support, you guys. I'm working on a lot of things, and we're going to keep it coming. Let's see what happens with the season. You guys have a good night, and I'll talk to you next time.